Well, hello, friends and neighbors. I am Samuel Trapp. This is International Flavor, and I am very glad to have you here today. And just wanted to, excuse me, wanted to have an have a show because I think it's important that we discuss a lot of the stuff that's going on in the world today. I may actually play this uh, for one of my shows next week. It might replace one of them. Not really sure. And um, it's I think I'm gonna have to start again. I think I may have messed it up, and hope that's not the case. But we will see what happened and go from there. And but anyway, this is Samuel Trapp. You are listening to Damn Radio and International Flavor, and I am very glad to have you. And I think that it would be very well to get started with what's going on. I have a thesis for tonight's show that I wanted to tell you about, and that I don't know. I'm a little grumpy about all of this, and I have been watching and thinking about everything that's been going on lately on the Ukrainian war topic, the war that's going on in Ukraine, that none of us are huge fans of. And I've been really wondering how the old Trumpster is going to pull it off, really, where he, I don't know, where he doesn't where it doesn't become his war, where it does not become his war. I think it would be very bad if this turns into his war instead of Biden's war. So far, he's been able to get away with it being the Biden war and not his own. And but I think that's changing. I'm very much worried about, and I've watched a lot of shows about this. One in Russia that was kind of interesting that they got talking about it, and I agree, and it surprises me that I guess it shouldn't surprise me, but it sort of surprised me that they saw the the same things that I see with all of this. The fact is that this may be forced to be Trump's war because even if he doesn't give more money, even if he doesn't give more weapons, he refused to see Zelensky the last time. Now, allegedly, Zelensky's going to go to the G7. How's Ukraine part of the G7? Ukraine's not part of the G7, and he's gonna have Zelensky. The talk is that they're gonna have a meeting with Zelensky on the sidelines, like Trump is, and I disagree with that completely. I don't think that should happen, but I really think that the Z-Man is going to be out for more money, more weapons, and sanctions, more action against Russia. Trump may not be able to stop the sanctions. You know, if Graham really does have 78 to 82 votes in the Senate for this sanction package that he's trying to put together, then it's possible that he could do it without the signature of the president. I don't think he'd get it past the what do you call it, House of Representatives. But what do I know? I suppose I could be wrong about that. But a lot of news going on today, a lot of things to share. Wanted to talk and discuss. If you want to join in the program, across the bottom of the screen is a link. If you copy or type, I don't think you can copy the link, but if you type that link, you can put it in your own browser and you will show up on my screen and you can join the screen and you can log in and talk with me on this channel. And I invite you to do so should you feel the desire to do so in English today. I'm going to be doing another show tomorrow in Russian at 10 a.m. that I'm going to do, and I'm going to try to uh, be on time with that. I think I'll make it, and I want to make sure that I get to do that entire program for you, and I'm going to do it in Russian, and it will be showing, and it'll be on some of the same topics as today. But I usually don't have any Russians take me up on the video. If anybody's listening and they wish to join in, that would be great. I'm going to copy or type the StreamYard link to my brother and see if I can get him to show up tonight. And we have been doing shows on damradio.com. He's been joining me once a week or so, and I like having him. I like him joining the program, and it seems to work out for us pretty well. And I thought we might experiment some with this platform if he saw the need to do it. I have asked him if he would cover one or two of my shows when I go on vacation. Or actually, I'm just going to be out of town for a couple of days. And I thought it would be nice to have him do my program on his own. And so I kind of wanted to show him how to do it. But I am very much interested in chatting with people that wish to chat. And if you wish to join me today, I'm actually going to. I don't want. I'm trying to get the sound not to link through there, and I don't think it will, but it puts it on pretty loud. So I'm going to quit talking for a minute while I copy this link. That's what I want to do, is copy the link is all. And let's see. I'm going to invite the guest. There we go. Very comical. All righty. Okay, and now I've been able to copy that link and send it to my brother, and hopefully he will show up. And that would be very nice if he did. And then we could chat and we could put the show out there and life would be good. Sorry to take the time to do that now. I should have done that before. I should have done it before the show, but I got a little bit busy and then I was a little bit late. And there you have it. But there's a lot of news today, a lot of things going on. Everybody knows about the peace deal that they've been trying, what they're trying to do. The fact is that there's all these bone crushing sanctions that they want to give to Russia, that they want to have them have to deal with these bone crushing sanctions. And it's just foolish to think that they have to explain to us why it's a problem, which they do. But let's talk about this. Politico came out with an article today, said bone-crushing Russia sanctions would crush the U.S. trade. This is from Politico. And basically, It's just saying that new U.S. sanctions would disrupt America's relationships with big trade partners, just like all of the talk that we have constantly about tariffs, Trump and his tariffs. I'm not saying it's necessarily a bad thing, but they do have a tendency in the beginning to hurt everyone else. But in the end, sanctions will hurt you. Sanctions will hurt you. And so these tariffs, if they put the tariffs out there in the short term, it's going to hurt the U.S., all of these tariffs in the short term. In the long term, it'll even out, and everybody knows that. And Trump is generally smarter than everybody else when it comes to that. And so he actually understands that. I understand it, and I'm no rocket scientist or genius when it comes to economics, but I do have a degree in economics. Well, it's only a minor focus in economics, but I did study a good amount of economics and supply demand. And when you put artificial controls on it, you can actually regulate and do it fairly well. But what it has done, has taken Russia, and Russia has looked inward, and their economy. Now, there's a lot of pluses to them and their production and the factories and everything that they already had, which all the infrastructure already was. They didn't have to go out and build lots and lots of factories. They have built a lot of factories, but they really didn't have to because they still had them. And, for us, we don't have them anymore. We really don't have a lot of factories just sitting around. So these sanctions tend to hurt us and not Russia. So now Politico is actually agreeing. So let's read what Politico had to say about this. I don't see who has where the title or who actually put this, but it was Politico first. But this is a report about the Politico. Politico reported Saturday the proposed bill includes a 500% tariff on imports from any country that continues to buy oil, gas, uranium, and other key commodities from Russia. Among those most affected, India and China, which together account for 70% of Russian energy exports. Well, it hasn't stopped them from buying them yet because they're still cheaper, and so the sanctions would go the other way. But China is bailing on being a huge trade partner with us anyway. They've all been looking other directions, thus BRICS and all the other countries, because they don't want to deal with this sort of thing. And there's a huge group of them. Next month is the BRICS conference in Brazil, and I'm still trying to, figure out how to get there and make sure that my press credentials are up to date and all of that, so I can go to the BRICS conference, and I definitely want to. And so I'm going to try to figure out how to get there. I'm worried that they'll hold it all in Portuguese, but even in the Russian last year, there were tons of people speaking English there. So let's get on with this. Among those affected, it says the 70% would be India and China. Yeah, but I don't think it does. Imposing 500% tariffs on Chinese imports would trigger a surge in consumer prices, disrupt supply chains, and push U.S. unemployment to levels associated with recession. Thus says Politico. But these sanctions could be described as targeting the U.S. itself, since the country continues to rely on enriched uranium import from Russia for its nuclear power sector. And it could effectively isolate the U.S. from many of the world's leading economies, including European allies. Rand Paul wrote in the in the publication Responsible Statecraft that the bill would essentially amount to an embargo and would trigger economic calamity on a scale never before seen in our country. I'm not sure I definitely agree with him on that, but he had such punitive measures this is important, are unlikely to change Moscow's core strategic goals and would only further entrench the U.S. in failing foreign policy, which I believe we fail miserably in foreign policy. I've said that for the last 3 years at least, and before at that plenty of time, but I've been a lot more public about it recently. Sanctions bill was introduced in April by Who else? Lindsey Graham and Richard Blumenthal. He's a Democrat. In addition to 500% tariffs, it would include secondary sanctions targeting countries that maintain commercial ties with Moscow. See, it's so important to people like Graham and Blumenthal that they continue to have wars. This is how they hide money through war. They can hide it and they can push it everywhere. And so this is how it is done. Graham recently proposed amendments to exempt countries providing military aid to Ukraine from tariffs. This change would shield the EU, which continues to import gas from Russia. The senator described the bill as one of the most draconian sanctions bills ever written, and the sanctions are bone crushing. Russia consistently criticizes Western sanctions, calls them illegal, and maintains that they fail to inflict lasting economic damage. In March, President Putin said that a total of 28,595 sanctions have been imposed on Russian companies and individuals, more than the total number on all other countries combined. And according to the president, the West sought to eliminate Russia as a competitor, but its economy has only grown more resilient under sanctions. And I agree. I think uh, a mistake to continue to do this. One of the things that I want to talk about in quite a bit of detail is, and I put some notes together about it, and I watched yesterday and today. I watched Putin's video conference with all of his people who were at the high levels after these trains were sabotaged and the bridges were collapsed and blown up by Ukrainians in front of the trains, and so the trains would crash. And there were some interesting statements about all that. One of the, everyone knows that there's been about 407 drones and 44 missiles that have been, what do you call it, sent to Ukraine over the last, that was the big one on the 5th, the evening of the 5th. Between 2 days, it's been over 1,000 drones and missiles. And I watched an interesting video, a military one. I might even play some of that for you, that says that these Patriot battery systems that are supposed to protect and eliminate explosions, eliminate the missile threat, they just aren't working, that they're overwhelming, especially Russia's new platform that with the missiles that don't use a ballistic approach. They use a random approach, so the ballistic arc can no longer be tracked, and that means, and plus the warheads split together, and some of them are fake, and so they can fool the Patriot system into thinking that instead of one warhead coming, there are 5 coming from one rocket, and then each one of these Patriot missiles takes, it's $1 million. And so if you suddenly one target splits into 5, you have to choose which one you're going to shoot at, and the battery operators have to figure out which one is the real one. And the Patriot isn't able to do it. Now, allegedly, the U.S. is developing something that can now differentiate between the false images and the real missile if they do split, but they're also being overwhelmed by all of these Shahed drones that come in, and they're using these Shahed drones, which cost, I don't know, $5,000, are now required. It costs you $1 million to take them out. if you can catch them. And they also have fake ones. So they'll send out 200 of these, and only 20 of them have warheads on them, or explosives attached to them. And so it's been a pretty bad deal. Well, all the talk has been about that over the last 2 days. The 3-4 days before that, it had to be about these terrorist attacks. And Putin, when he interviewed with his the group of administrative officials and ministers, was talking about it. He was talking about, or they were talking about these attacks on civilian objects like trains. And uh, in one of them, and there were 3 examples, and they had a doctor interviewing or giving a report from the hospital in Bryansk where one of the explosions took place, and there was 2 people in the room with him that were injured in the train, and Putin, wished them all well and listened to the story that they had to tell. Well, right before them, there was a guy explaining the explosions that occurred, and basically what he said was that there were 3 different explosions that occurred, and one of them were a passenger train. 120 people were injured, 7 people were killed, and of the 120, many of them were children. There were 3 explosives with plastic explosives of Western manufacture, and the first one was the equivalent of 15 tons of 15-ton equivalent that blew up these bridges, that blew up the first bridge. The second one was in the Kursk bridge, underneath the supports, which got a freight train, which had empty cars, and they killed both of the engineer and his assistant in that train. And again, they talked about it was lower control units with Western explosive. And then the other one was 5 explosive devices under a bridge, and 2, again, it was plastic explosive with 2 kilograms of equivalent, anyway, explosive capacity. And again, Ukrainian detonators, Ukrainian equipment, housing, but Western explosive inside of them. And so, it's definitely the work of Ukraine, and this is definitely sabotage and terrorism. These are terrorist acts. You're going after civilian structure, right? And so this is all about going after the civilian. They cannot win on the ground, and they're not winning on the ground. And so all they have left is fear, and to create a fear in Russia. And what they really want are these Taurus missiles that Germany's been promising. And that's part of the reason that they need Trump's approval to fire inside of Russia. Now, I've given my reports not on video, but I've given it over the radio program that I do, internationalflavor.com, and over the past week. And they need Trump to grant them the ability to use U.S. and Western missiles inside of Russia. And that will just up the terrorist nature of what they're going to do. They will start sending missiles over, and it'll just become a missiles back and forth warfare. But Ukraine can't build their own missiles. They're allegedly starting factories to build German Taurus missiles, and within the next year, allegedly, they'll be able to build their own Taurus missiles and maybe even target themselves. But in order to use Storm Shadow or use U.S. ATACMS or anything like that, or U.S. other forms of missiles, they will need the president's permission to do so. I've spoken to you all week about whether they had the permission of Trump to use Western intelligence, and I believe they did. Trump has been very quiet about it, but whether Trump knew specifically or his administration knew they were getting this, Ukraine couldn't have pulled it off just all by themselves. And I think there's a serious effort to give them that. There was an interesting article. What was that in today that I read? Where are my notes on that? That said, might have been a New York Times or a Washington Times article that said it. Yeah. Oh, it was in the Washington Post. That's right. That because a guy named David Ignatius wrote an article in the Washington Post, and basically, what according to him, it's going to become more of a terrorism type of war, with Ukraine lobbing missiles, hopefully from America inside of Russia, and Russia doing the same to them nightly. And so I don't know. I think the war needs to end. I think the war needs to, we need to get rid of all of what's happening so far over there. And the U.S. makes a serious mistake if they continue to give weapons and money, more importantly, to Ukraine. Part of the reason that Zelensky wants to meet with Trump at this G7 meeting is that he wishes to go there and, again, beg for money. The money they're getting from the European Union is not enough for them to continue. They've already defaulted on 2 months worth of bills. Their credit's been downgraded to what, triple D or something like that. I'm not sure what that means, but that's what I read. Said it was a triple D, and but downgraded. And now they've missed 2 months worth. There's been stories all over Ukrainian newspapers that they're not paying. And one of the biggest stories that I wanted to get to today is the fact that Ukraine has completely reneged on their own peace pledge when they had these talks on Monday in Istanbul. And Russia has 6,000 frozen Ukrainian bodies of dead soldiers that the first 1,200 are waiting at the border even now. And Russia is waiting at the border. There was an interesting video about how they were waiting, and the story is the lead negotiator, Vladimir Medinsky, gave a report. And I'm going to go ahead and read to you the whole article. This is terrible, and then I'll read some commentary on it. So Moscow said unilaterally in Istanbul the other day that they had some 6,000 bodies to turn over. Moscow said it was going to return the 6,000 bodies that it has in its possession to Kiev as a humanitarian gesture. It was not as a 6,000 for 6,000 because nobody's certain how many, if any, Russian bodies that the Ukrainians have. But Ukraine is not accepting these bodies. The bodies are waiting at the border, and they haven't shown up, although they agreed to do so. The investigator or the mediators from both sides agreed to this on Monday in Istanbul. Ukraine has not accepted the bodies of its troops, which Russia offered to return, providing strange reasons for the decision, according to Moscow's lead negotiator, Vladimir Medinsky. Russia decided to repatriate the remains of the 6,000 slain Ukrainians so the families would know. They wanted to have it as a unilateral humanitarian gesture on Monday. And they also agreed to exchange 1,200 prisoners. And they haven't done that yet either. And so the first batch of frozen remains of 1,212 Ukrainian soldiers has arrived in refrigerated trucks at the exchange area in the border between the two countries, and the rest are on the way, he said. Kiev has also been handed a list of 640 heavily wounded and the younger prisoners, those under the age of 25, which they agreed to exchange. And these prisoners are held by Moscow so that they can be exchanged as well. The contract group of the Russian Ministry of Defense is on the border. However, the Ukrainian side unexpectedly postponed the acceptance of the body and the exchange of the prisoners of war for an indefinite period. According to the Russian negotiator, the Ukrainian team didn't even arrive at the exchange site. And the reason Kiev provides for this justification are various and strange, he said, and didn't elaborate. And I watched his appearance in Russian, and here's what he said: "We call on Kiev to adhere to the schedule and all agreements that we have reached, and to immediately begin the exchange so the wounded can return home and the dead can receive a proper Christian burial," said Medinsky. "Moscow's team is on site and fully ready to fulfill the terms we agreed to on Monday," he reiterated, adding that Russia keeps its word. And there's a lot of discussion on this on the Russian side. Soldiers who sacrificed their lives, this from somebody named Tanvir, on the Ukrainian side are denied return to their homeland, the land that they sacrificed their lives for, by the same criminals who sent them to their death. We get it. No one in the comment, this is Luther DeHaven, no one in the comments is mentioning the obvious. Ukrainians don't care. They didn't care when they swept them off the streets and sent them to certain death against a superior enemy. But the Iceman will do the right thing. Damn the USA for starting this war. Someone needs to end this war. The entire West is, yeah, well, that goes a little further than I want to go. Everybody seems to want to get into and blame the Jews, and I don't really understand that. And so I don't want to. But the fact is, there are some 6,000 bodies that want to be, that need to be repatriated into Ukraine, and they're refusing them. But the real reason they're refusing them is because they're broke. They are broke. They don't have any money, and they cannot. Hi, Clayton. What is this? This is the Sam Show. You are welcome to join if you would like and discuss the topics. The link is streaming across the bottom. But I'm discussing the failure of Ukraine to accept the remains of the bodies, and the reason they are not accepting the remains is because they cannot afford to. So just similar to the U.S. Army, the standard in the U.S. Army, when I served in the Army, if I died, my family would receive $200,000. Everybody got a life insurance from the free life insurance that was provided, and if you died while on active duty, your family would get the $200,000. Okay, and the other countries have similar things. Russia has a program where the person will get paid. I don't remember the exact number, so don't quote it to me, but I want to say they get somewhere in the neighborhood of 8 million rubles, which is approximately $100,000, something like that. It's a good amount of money. It's a pretty good amount of money. And in Ukraine, it's in hryvnia. Their currency is called the hryvnia. And so if there are the calculation for these bodies, if they are dead as a result of the war, is that if they return the bodies and the families know that their loved one is dead, their family can approach the government of Ukraine and get the total amount is somewhere in the neighborhood of $40,000 each, and for each dead body. So 40,000 I want to make sure I got this right. So, and I don't want to mess up with my zeros. And I am very much interested in this anyway. So 40,000 times 6,000 is, no, it's more than that. This is, it shows us $240 million that they would have to pay. But they also have all of these people that are prisoners and all of the lists of people. And so the numbers I have heard is that if they accept all of this, they have to pay some approaching $2 billion, and they don't have the money. They aren't paying families now, and they just passed a law in Ukraine that says a person who has fallen without a trace, they can't find him, the body is not returned, they don't have to pay that money for 2 years. They've already put that out. 2 years after the end of the war. So if they continue the war and have the war just keep on going, then they can put that be they can put that off for a very long time. And so it's a huge amount of money, and it's a huge problem. And everybody knows how corrupt Ukraine is anyway, that they are refusing to pay this in the first place. And so they're telling families, even now, in fact, they passed a resolution that says if you're entitled to this money, if your loved one has died, you only get the money after the end of the war for 2 years after the end of the war. So it doesn't help the family with anything. And that gives them another way to put it off. And then none of the laws are legitimate that are being passed anyway, because the president isn't legitimate, arguably. And that's what everybody's saying. That's why Russia won't sign a deal with them, is because they say that the resulting agreement would be invalid. And so it's, I don't know, no matter how you slice it, it's a mess. And so Ukraine has unexpectedly postponed a prisoner exchange with Russia. And why, we don't know. Nobody has said. What was agreed to at Istanbul was that 2 delegations agreed to exchange at least 1,000 prisoners, prioritizing those that are heavily wounded and those that are under the age of 25. And Russia unilaterally agreed to repatriate its remains of over 6,000 slain Ukrainian military personnel as a humanitarian gesture. On Saturday, Medinsky said that Moscow provided Ukraine with a list of 640 heavily wounded and younger prisoners, but Ukrainian side unexpectedly postponed the exchange of prisoners of war for an indefinite period. And he added that the Ukrainian team didn't even arrive at the exchange site and gave other various and strange pretexts for this absence. The official called on Medinsky, that is, called on Kiev to strictly adhere to the schedule and all agreements that actually had been reached, and to begin the exchange, stressing that the Russian team is on site and fully ready to work. The body repatriation is also on hold. He revealed that they refused to accept the bodies, even though the first batch of 1,212 Ukrainian soldiers has arrived on refrigerated trucks at the exchange area. Russian Defense Ministry Representative General Alexander Zorin confirmed that this was the case, noting that Russia had 4 other convoys, each carrying approximately 1,200 sets of remains ready for transfer as well. And we confirmed the full readiness to implement the Istanbul agreements, and we are prepared to transfer all bodies and proceed with the prisoner exchange as agreed between the party. But in a statement on Saturday, Kiev Coordination Headquarters for the Treatment of Prisoners of War said that instead of a constructive dialogue, we are once again faced with manipulation and attempts to use sensitive humanitarian topics for informational purposes. Ukrainian authorities insist that Russia's allegations do not correspond to reality or to previous agreements, neither regarding the prisoner exchange or the repatriation of bodies. They claim that Ukraine has submitted its list of prisoners to be exchanged, but Russia presented alternative lists which were not agreed upon. It also suggested that while an agreement on the repatriation had been reached, no date had been set, and that Russia is acting unilaterally in that regard. Russia previously publicly proposed dates. On Wednesday, Medinsky announced that Russia was ready to begin the swap on the 7th, 8th, and 9th, and that it would become the largest prisoner exchange. Following the first round of talks in Istanbul, Moscow and Kiev conducted a massive prisoner swap of over 1,000. Earlier this week, Russian officials expressed readiness to accept any remains of fallen Russian troops that Ukraine may be holding. Additionally, Moscow offered during the talks to establish temporary humanitarian pauses in specific areas of the battlefield to last 2 to 3 days so that both sides could gather remains of their soldiers. Medinsky said that Kiev's negotiators supported the idea, but Zelensky publicly rejected the proposal shortly thereafter. According to Russian presidential aid, the two sides had agreed to establish special medical commissions to help create exchange lists for severely injured soldiers without the need to wait for big political decisions. The swaps would be held regularly and in a routine manner, said Medinsky. Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Maria Zakharova told RIA Novosti that Ukraine's refusal to accept the body of its own dead show that Kiev does not care about its own citizens, whether they are alive or dead. Speaking to RT, it's another television, it's Russia Today, Russian MP Dmitry Bielik describes Kiev's actions as beyond the pale, barbaric, absolutely inhumane behavior, whatever flimsy reasons they are giving. This lawmaker suggested that Ukrainian authorities are refusing to accept the remains of their fallen troops to avoid paying the families compensation, as I outlined. State Duma Foreign Affairs Committee Chairman Leonid Slutsky echoed this sentiment, saying that such behavior is an example of such a rare cynicism and shows a total disregard for the memory of one's own fallen soldiers. And then they talk a little bit about there's been 2 rounds of negotiations of talks in Istanbul, held on May 16 and June 2nd. And that's been 2 years since they first talked. David Arakhamia, the head of the Ukrainian delegation, later stated that the decision was made following a visit to Kiev by Prime Minister Boris Johnson, who said he advised the Ukrainian government not to sign anything and to just fight. Johnson rejects that statement. But during the latest round of talks this month, Russia and Ukraine exchanged draft memorandums outlining a roadmap toward eventual peace and indicating a willingness to continue direct contact. And I listened to Lavrov give his report to President Putin, and he was saying that, I think we should continue. And then Putin says, well, these guys are terrorists. He was upset. And he said, these guys are terrorists. I don't, necessarily see the point. I agree with you, Sergei Viktorovich, but I don't necessarily see the point of why we are going to continue to work with this type of people that don't have anything decent to add. I don't know. There's commentary all over this article. You should know by now that Ukrainian leaders can't be trusted. Say what you will about Stalin, but he understood that in war there's no substitute for victory. Winston Smith says Ukraine is a pathetic heap of trash. Support for this repulsive country says everything about the West. Dr. Farid Farid. The Russians are fooling themselves with all that talk about the Kiev regime not living up to their pledge. It's well known that they don't. Um, Beats me why so many foreigners go to Kiev and can't seem to see the money billowing out, munitions and whatever else. They've been lured there. That's by a guy named Wombat Joey. Noel Falk, Russia is not being fooled. This so-called democratic freedom and human rights supporters of civilized Europe are behind Zelensky and his government. Russia is walking a wise path. Same guy, von der Leyen approves the Ukrainian conduct. She believes Ukraine spitting on Russia is a good thing. If they continue to treat Kiev in a good fashion and they end up looking foolish, that's everybody likes that in the West. I don't know. It's depressing that this is going on, and there can't be a good reason for not taking your own. There was a news story today about a Colombian president getting shot in the head. He's not dead; he made it. But a Colombian senator and presidential candidate Miguel Uribe Turbe was attacked and critically wounded during campaign in Bogota on Saturday. 39-year-old lawmaker from the right-wing Democratic Center Party was meeting supporters and he was shot in the head around 5 p.m. local time. Transported to a hospital in critical condition, a suspect was arrested at the scene. The world is a kind of a crappy place. I don't know if you heard about this one yet, but there was a Ukrainian recruitment officer killed. I'll get to that in a minute, but get this. This one, I always find these kind of stories, I don't want to say shocking, but I just don't get it. Okay, especially from a country that everyone speaks Russian. And this one is Latvia. Okay, this is in Latvia. A Latvian MP has been kicked out of a parliamentary session and could face further punishment for speaking Russian in violation of the legislature's new rules. The incident occurred on Thursday during discussions on a declaration to eradicate the consequences of Russification of Latvia, which authorities in Riga claim took place under Soviet rule from 1940 to 91. This is nonsense. It's your history. It's like us eradicating slavery. Slavery is part of our history. That's all there is to it. Nonsense for this type of thing to be going on. Since the escalation of the Ukraine conflict in 2022, Latvia and its Baltic neighbors, Estonia and Lithuania, intensified their efforts against alleged Russian influence. Riga implemented travel restrictions targeting Russian citizens, banned vehicles with license plates from Russia, and introduced a mandatory Latvian language test for long-term residents of Russian origin. Thousands who failed or refused the exam have been deported. The Kremlin denounces such measures as blatant discrimination against Russians. Same thing that was going on in the Donbass area. Same thing. Alexei Roslikov of the For Stability Party spoke out in Parliament against this declaration being included on the agenda. His party, represents the interests of Russian speakers in the country who make up 24.5% of its population, according to a 2021 census. The lawmaker criticized the growing marginalization of Russian speakers in Latvia, saying, "What is next? A law prohibiting Russian names for children because they sound Russian?" Roslikov delivered his speech in Latvian, but concluded it with a phrase in Russian, claiming, "There are more of us and Russian is our language. The MP displayed an obscene finger gesture to the audience. His behavior outraged his colleagues, who voted to expel him from the session, and it was supported by 69 out of 100 members of the legislature. The speaker of it's called the Saima, if I'm saying it right, Daiga Marina, said that Roslikov shown disrespect to his fellow lawmakers and could face further punishment, including a ban on attending up to 6 more parliamentary sessions and a warning. In late May, the Saima voted in new regulations according to which the MPs should only communicate in the official Latvian language. Roslikov later told the media he had no regrets, calling his outburst appropriate when someone is denied the right to speak their own languages. Former Russian President Dmitry Medvedev shared a video from the Saima on his page on X and praised the MP for standing up for the Russian language. On the eve of Russian Language Day, which is June 6th, decent people accessibly explained everything to the diehard Russophobes in their native Russian language. Medvedev, who currently serves as deputy chair of Russia's Security Council, wrote. Isn't that terrible? Nonsense. It's hard to believe. Hard to believe. Where else are we today? What else we got for information to discuss? Excuse me. Maria Zakharova stated that Ukraine is engaged in self-genocide. Now we're going back to the bodies that they never took, but this article isn't that long, so I will attempt to share it with you. Let's see. This is a guy named Dmitry Bielik, who is a member of Russia's International Affairs Committee, stated that one of the reasons for Ukraine failing to accept the bodies of its soldiers is its unwillingness to pay compensation to their families. This is how stuff, this thinking of how to stuff their own wallets and not give a penny to citizens. The Kiev regime, led by Zelensky, pursues its bloody policies and destroys its own people. Former Pentagon analyst Michael Maloof suggested that Ukraine's decision is rooted in financial concerns. I think that they are embarrassed by the numbers. I've heard sums of up to more than $1 billion that they would have to pay the families, and they do not have the money. The chairman of Russia's Parliament Foreign Affairs Committee, Leonid Slutsky, said that Ukrainian authorities show their rare cynicism. In a war to the last Ukrainian, they are exclusively focused on preserving their own power, even at the cost of actual sacrilege. They've already eliminated religion. You can't do it. And so if they don't want to pay for the repatriation of the bodies of their fallen, there's something crazy about that. Kiev explained its refusal to collect the remains of its troops by claiming the date had not yet been agreed upon. So we shall see. Maybe it will go correctly. I don't know. Did you hear about how the Ukrainian recruitment officer was killed in a car bombing? This is a crazy story. So you go out to and remember, each one of these guys has to collect 12 every day. Every day they got to go out and collect 12 men to send to the front for war purposes. Every day. That's a new law that requires these guys to do it. Now, that's going to make it a little bit hard for them to collect the average of 500 to 1,000 for letting people go. because these guys make really good money. So this guy got blown up. And the story goes, he's a senior recruitment officer. His name is Oleg Nomerovsky, really Nomerovsky. I don't know where the udarenia, the stress is in that word, but he was reportedly killed in a car explosion in Odessa on Friday. Investigators suspect the blast was intentional and it was triggered remotely. The Odessa Regional Police confirmed one fatality and said an investigation is underway, but did not name the guy who was killed. Although everybody knows now it was Nomerovsky. It was him. Law enforcement sources cited by local media state that the vehicle belonged to the local draft office, and the victim is Colonel Oleg Nomerovsky, top official. If you're watching and you'd like to join in, that link below on StreamYard will bring you into the green room, and you can that will show me that you wish to be on the screen. I'd be happy to talk with anybody that wishes to show up, should they so desire. We got about half an hour left in the show. If you have questions or if you'd like to appear, you can either say so in the commentary or copy that link and put it in your browser, and it doesn't cost anything, just so you know. The incident, the explosion, comes as Ukraine faces mounting scrutiny over its conscription practices. There are plenty of videos that you see on Telegram and elsewhere, that TikTok, that show these people getting a crap beat out of them and stuffed into minivans by military, not recruiters, mobilization guys that are mobilizing these men. And boy, they don't treat them very well. They beat the snot out of them and throw them in the vehicle and take them along. Ukraine has been under general mobilization since 2022, which says that most men from the ages of 18 to 60 cannot leave the country. And to leave the country, you got to pay on average $8,000 to $10,000 to get out. The people that I've met here, some of whom I've worked with, one of them told me he paid $8,500. Another one told me it was over $10,000, and then it was hard for him to get in to the U.S. He went through Mexico, and he attempted to cross the border every day for several weeks, and the border guards wouldn't let him. And then one of them told him to go buy a car, so he went and he bought a car. It was him, his father, his wife, and two kids that came across, and they had paid $8,000 to get out of Ukraine. He had paid a certain amount of money. I forget how much he said, $1,500 or something, I want to say, that he paid to get out of being mobilized. He was in younger 30s. And then he said that they bought a car in Mexico, and it took them 7 or 8 times of going to the border, crossing in the car, before they were finally given a short-term visa. And then they came in and filed for the U4U program and, get free money from the government, which I'm definitely against. But I'd like the guy to be helped. I understand he's in a bad scenario, but he's working for me, and I was paying him $200 a day. Why should he get paid free money from the government through this U4U program and still be able to make money working for me? It's nonsense. But anyway, men aged 18 to 60 were banned from leaving the country. The conscription age was lowered from 27 to age 25 in 2024, but the U.S. hasn't been able to force anybody in Ukraine to agree to lower the limit to age 18. And if they did, they could probably pick up another 400,000 to 600,000 recruits, is what they're saying. So they're trying to target them with incentives like Russia does. When I was in Russia last year, there's signs on like bus seats, on the side of buses, on big billboards, when you're driving down the road, that you can get 8 million rubles, which right now the ruble's trading at 83, I think. So let's figure that out real quick. So these people up to 8 million, it said. So I think not everybody gets this. It depends on your specialty. I assume 8 million would go to the infantry, but 8 million divided by 82 rubles puts it, it's nearly $100,000, and that'll buy you a good apartment over there, and you get a good apartment for that, and that is good money in Russia. Anyway, videos have repeatedly surfaced showing Ukrainian officials using force to detain men in what they call busification, a term referring to forcibly loading recruits into unmarked vans. Russian President Putin said Ukrainian recruitment officers are grabbing people like dogs on the street, contrasting it with Russia's volunteer-based enlistment. They are catching 30,000 people a month there, and we have 50 to 60,000 a month enlisting willingly. And that's true, they really do. One such video from Lutsk in western Ukraine showed soldiers dragging a food delivery worker into a white van as he resisted. The clip went viral after being shared on X. Elon Musk reacted to the video with exclamation points and criticized Ukraine's conscription policy. He wrote in November, "How many more need to die?" when he responded to one of those. Ukraine's defense ministry dismisses such criticism of the mobilization process as, what is it, people? Come on now, Russian propaganda, of course. But Deputy Defense Minister Lieutenant General Ivan Gavrilyuk acknowledged the issue last month, calling boosification a shameful phenomenon. In response to voluntary enlistments, Kiev recently launched a campaign targeting men 18 to 24, offering a one-time payout of 1 million hryvnia, which is about $24,000 for a year of service. So you can get this 24,000, get immediately sent to the front line and be the meat lines to get blown up, because they don't train them. Their training is, by all accounts, not good. The statements, there are a lot of replies on this one. Hopefully, ordinary Ukrainians are brave enough to launch a revolution on their cruel NATO agent government. Ukrainians are not stupid or uneducated, but their Nazi government is. They kill anyone who disagree with them. That's true. Nonsense. A majority of Europeans are victims of media disinformation, and you find them supportive of the EU and the NATO bloc, especially in Kiev. There's some stories there that are talking about what, I mean, it's not good what's going on, and there's plenty more stories to talk about that we could. Here, how did he put it? I wish I could play this. Maybe I can play it. No, damn it. Where's their I watched a couple of good stories, and I watched a report in Russian, very nice, the other day, talking about exactly these issues, and it was well worth the effort of watching. And I wish I may paraphrase it for one of my shows this week, but so far I can't do it. So far I haven't been. I can translate it, but it's a very long show. It was like 45 minutes long, and so getting it all translated will take me a little while. But I may do it for one of my shows this week. I wanted to talk about a couple of reports that I read, and I told you already about what I feel is the terrorism of hitting civilian targets in Russia. like the Crimean Bridge, which is absolutely uh, a public. It's not a military object. It's definitely not military in nature. And there were some videos of that being attempting to be blown up, and they were sending these little ship uh, drone to blow up the columns, and Russia took a couple of them out. And then there was an explosion under the bridge in an attempt to take out one of the columns, but it really didn't do much, not even anything superficial. Um, I wanted to talk to about. Remember, I told you I watched that presidential briefing with 10, 15 people who were overseeing the actions after these terrorist attacks on the trains in Bryansk and Kursk, and Putin was there. And when he spoke, so first he went around the room and listened to everybody. And basically, the railroad system of the people who died said that everybody who died in that is getting, the families are getting 2 million rubles. The people that were hospitalized and had serious injuries are getting 1 million rubles, and people who are just injured are getting 100,000 rubles for their uh, difficulty. Said that they have already rerouted all the trains, that the bridges are being rebuilt even now, and it was a pretty good briefing. Everybody who's involved, like the medical services, were there. The railroad station was there. There was an old doctor there who talked about, well, this has been going on for years. He said, I remember back in 2014 when Ukraine came and bombed and was attacking and killing people in Donetsk, that they were attacking. There was like a young boy who was picked up, who was getting ready to die. And this doctor sent out to all of his international colleagues, and he was an old guy, so he had plenty of them. And he sent out to all his medical colleagues around the world and sent it to governments around the world to come and talk about all of these things. And the only person to show up was Vladimir Putin. Showed up, met the boy, talked to his family, talked to the doctor, and this guy said he remembered that and was talking about it. And he said, these terrorist things, he said to Vladimir Putin, he says, I know, and obviously this is somewhat political what they were talking about, but he said, I appreciate, Vladimir Putin, you didn't say a lot about him, but he does the right thing and he shows the right thing. And he have you heard him come out against Trump yet for Trump calling him crazy? Have you heard him say anything when Biden called him a killer? When Biden said he was a killer, it's nonsense. But they never stoop to that level. They don't do it. These are true politicians, and they don't get into these words. I've been watching this Elon Musk and President Trump over the last few days, and they left and they hugged each other, and everything was grand, and life was good, right? They were two important guys. They were just ending a relationship for people to get back to what both of them do best, right? And I now they're treating each other foolishly, and it makes no sense whatsoever. What a couple of numbskulls. You're gonna send Trump's gonna, and now he calls Musk crazy. Now I have a lot of friends who say this is a distraction. This is some kind of other plan, and they're doing this on purpose. Yeah, why are we playing such games if that's really what we're doing? There was an article about it that you might look up by a guy named Tariq Siller Amar, and I haven't read the whole article yet. I may share it sometime this week. I have it right in front of me right now, but his opinion pieces are usually pretty long, and I don't want to spend the rest of the time talking about it. But it's an interesting article. His name is Tariq Cyril Amar. He's a historian from Germany. and works at Koç University in Istanbul on Russia, Ukraine, and Eastern Europe, the history of World War II, the cultural Cold War, and the politics of memory. Now, some of those sound pretty made up, don't they? The cultural Cold War, politics of memory. What the hell is that? Be interesting to take one of his classes. Maybe he's a professor. But he talks about the two very rich and very powerful and very big American egos have had a very public and very loud cat fight. And frankly, I'm against it, whatever the point is. And, why is it that in America we always seem to be playing games while the rest of the world, well, except for Europe, the rest of the world is being relatively serious, And we've got these, I don't know what, people sitting around having dung fights like we used to have when I was a kid. You'd throw in horse apples at each other. You'd use gloves, but anyway, in that conference in front of Putin the other day, I wanted to get back to that. But if you get a chance to read about the big egos of these guys, you should. But I wanted to get back into the thanks, Camden. I saw your comment there. I'll even put it up for a minute. How about that? Except Europe, yeah, Europe's a bunch of I don't know what to call them. Europe is a bunch of drama kings and queens too, just like America. We have Trump and Musk as drama kings. It's really sad. To U.S. President Trump, arguably the single most powerful politician in the world, and his now former buddy in chief, certifiably the single richest oligarch on the planet, have torched Wall Street with their exuberant bromance of almost a year in stunning and spectacular finale of fiery mutual recriminations. Say what you will about oligarch techno-capitalism, but it can be very entertaining. And so it is entertaining. I kind of like it. I wanted to show you all who Maria Zakharova is. Right before I get to the Putin thing, because she says that when Russia has accused Ukraine of self-genocide in its feud over troop remains. Let me show that to you. So Zakharova is right there. I wonder if it'll let me expand that any, so it's a little bit bigger. Yeah, there's Maria Zakharova, and she gives a briefing several times a week, and the briefing is 3 hours, and she is one smart aleck. I like listening to her because she speaks very clean Russian. And that's why I like listening to Putin, to Lavrov. Medvedev sometimes goes all over. Lavrov is very, very well spoken, and I like listening to him. And it's hard for me sometimes to watch, I don't know, television or comedy club or something like that. It's difficult. But listening to them is it's interesting. But here it says she has branded Ukraine's failure to take the body of their own fallen soldiers as an act of self-genocide, and she accuses Kiev on turning its back on its own people in both life and death. Hate to say it, but I tend to agree with her in that regard. And I don't know how this is going to end, but I did want to tell you, finish up my point about Vladimir Putin. And after the discussion of that doctor and a couple other people who gave the reports to him on this pretty cool screen, I wonder if I have that somewhere that I can show you what he had. I'll bring up, oops, damn it, I didn't mean to do that. Let's do this, and I'll see if I can find that that screen of where that video is because I want to show the video. It was or at least the photo of his discussions. Yeah, but I didn't watch it on YouTube. It was some. Oh no, there it is. And I'll see if I can show it to you on the screen without playing it, because here is Vladimir Vladimirovich, which I will show, and he is in his report, and he is talking about. We won't give the sound of it, but you can see his TV there. So here's his TV, and so this is how he does his meetings in various places. And so this is the guy. This is Medinsky, who is the chief negotiator for the Ukraine side. Lavrov was on there somewhere, but maybe he left by that time. This could be him right here, but I can't see it well enough. And there was a couple of doctors and a couple of other people that were talking, and it's possible that they. Oh, there's Lavrov right there. When Lavrov is talking, that's Sergei Viktorovich, and he speaks very cleanly when you listen to him. But at the end of it all, when Putin got to the very end of this and gave his speech, here's where we were when his whole speech was. And he was talking to the crowd. This guy here on the right with the beard, he gave an extremely interesting report about all the video efforts and talking about YouTube blocking them, blocking everything in Russian from Russia. And I told you about this too. I had 15,000, I still have 15,000 subscribers to my Russian channel. And tomorrow I plan to do a Russian show in the morning. And hopefully a bunch of my Russian subscribers will watch. And he was talking about that and the efforts they are taking to improve countrywide all of their stuff. I love the open nature of this. These are all very important people, each one telling their part. And this is how Putin has these video staff meeting, if you will, cabinet meetings with various people. And it was quite effective. And you get to listen to them. And, I'll keep the sound down low, but read what he says. I think he's talking about, because there it is. The current Kiev regime does not need peace at all. They don't want for it. Peace is mostly a circ of power, and power for this regime apparently is more important than peace and the lives of people whom it does not consider. Well, now it's gone, and I turned it down so low. We will discuss all the nuances of this. He talks about it in a different meeting with people, but he's very interesting to listen to, and sometimes you can read him. Like this one especially came, you can hear it in Russian, and I usually turn off the subtitles, especially when the subtitles are in a different language. And when they're in English and I'm listening in Russian, does nothing but bug the crap out of me, and I don't like to see that. But here he is. This is the guy giving his speech on all of the efforts that they've been making to change things. And where is the final screen? I like the ones that come out and show the whole screen. And it's not going to come up. Doesn't matter anyway. I'm wasting my time talking about all that. But Putin, during that speech, here I took some notes about what he said, was after all these people talked, and after this guy talked about, this is the chief mediator who showed the list. Remember, we hear all over here in the West how Russia allegedly stole tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of children from Ukraine, is what they say. And he says, give us a list and we'll give them back. This is what everybody said. Give us a list of these children. They gave him a list of 339 kids. And so this guy was like, this is offensive. They tell us how we have stolen. We've been waiting for 2 years to get the information of how we've allegedly stolen all these children. And they like to tell everybody in the West that we have stolen their children and haven't given them back. He said, we've repatriated 150 of these 339 already. And previous to so Kiev doesn't know that these children have already been reunited with parents. But when this story first came out 2 years ago, it was because Russia found an abandoned orphanage with children still in it and no adults, just kids. The adults abandoned them and left them there. And so Russia took them to Russia. They took them to a safe area, took them to the Russian side, and then started to repatriate some of them. But most of them were in orphanages and their parents weren't around. And so now they're trying to figure out who their relatives are and all of that. And so Ukraine gave them a list of 339 names. And this guy's offended, Medinsky. He's like, man, this is offensive because they told us tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of children they were talking about that did not get returned and that we stole their children. And so Putin, when he was talking earlier or later, he was saying that let's put him up on the screen for a second. He was saying that he said several different things. Once Ukraine dreamed of defeating us, and that's not going to happen. Now they attempt to scare us because the only tool they have left is fear. And that is why they are starting these terrorist things. So remember that Crocus, concert hall that got blown up? The Ukrainians were very much tied in that and paid the guys who actually carried it out and went in with weapons and were blowing people up. That's a Ukrainian intelligence organization that did that. And that was hundreds of people killed in there. They did the bridge crises. They've done a couple of other terrorist things over the last couple of years. They blow up buses full of people in them. They attack apartment buildings in Russia. And so Vladimir Putin says, how can we deal with such people, or why would we continue to talk to them, basically? Now they try to scare us because the only tool they have left is fear. They ask for a ceasefire, but engage in terrorism. So what is the point? With whom are we supposed to discuss peace or ceasefires? Across the world, they talk only about Russia bombing Ukraine, and they don't talk about the things that Ukraine is doing in Russia. And what I read to you there, that power is more important to them than the lives of their citizens. And then he stopped and said he would continue to talk about that in more private discussions that they will have. And it's been quite a week, especially with all the West going crazy about how Ukraine blew up those airplanes last week, which, remember, those airplanes were blown up with the help of the U.S. They had U.S. level satellite imaging of the exact locations of these, which both the Russia and the U.S. it's actually under quite a few nuclear weapons treaties, but the main one was the New START treaty, that they were required to keep these sorts of the bombers out in the open. But Ukraine couldn't have known exactly where they were without the West providing all of the details of where specific planes were located. And they don't believe that that the Trump administration did not know. Frankly, I'm not so sure I believe that either. Although Zelensky gave a speech in English, a TV interview somewhere in English a couple of days ago, where he said, "Oh no, the only ones who knew were me, his minister of security, whose name I can't remember, and nobody else." He said the truck drivers didn't even know that the truck drivers were Russian truck drivers, and they thought they were transporting these small wooden homes, and they didn't know that the tops of the vans that were there, a tractor trailer, the trailer part, the tops of these things rolled back, opened up, and it was full of drones in the top 6-8 inches of the the roof of the trucking, and that the truck drivers didn't even know that that stuff was in there. And so rather interesting, to say the least, that the week started out so well for Ukraine, with everybody talking about how wonderful they're doing, with Lindsey Graham over there telling them, "Oh, don't worry, we'll get you more money." And that guy spends more time in Kiev than he does in South Carolina. And he's nothing. I mean, he's a waste of space as far as the Senate goes. You always know what he's after: more money to line his own pockets, more money for the military-industrial complex, and that's that. And so, um, you know, these are interesting times we live in. I just want to point out that this has been a special edition of International Flavor. You can join us on International Flavor Sunday through Thursday at 9 p.m. Central Time, Missouri time, Chicago time, however you want to say that, on damradio.com/live is how you will get it. Usually, I try to once a week do a video platform here. Be nice to get someone to join me and come on the stage, and you do that by this link below. And I always try to put the link on and out to get people to come in and chat with me. And maybe next time we could try that. It's a lot of fun. And tomorrow at 10 a.m. Florida time, I will be doing a Russian version of the program. And that does not have automatic translation into English, but I believe it comes out in English afterward. And I usually get a pretty good number of comments on there from my Russian followers. And we have a little bit of a discussion there, and I will be doing that tomorrow morning. And or like I say, around 10 o'clock. If you're interested in listening to the prior shows, you can do that at damradio.com. And here is that website. You can go to damradio.com. If you go to damradio.com live, you can hit the listen now button. All of the podcasts are here, and you can listen to whatever one you like by going down below and finding them. I also have my International Flavor website that you can go to, that is right here. And all you got to do is type in internationalflavor.com, and it will bring you to this page. And all of my prior shows are here. Had a good discussion with my brother on Thursday night, and he's a good one for talking to that. I lived with him in Qatar for a year. We had a lot of decent discussions. Had my Wednesday show about Lindsey Graham and have an old Trumpster by the short hairs. And anyway, it can be quite entertaining. If you would like to follow me on my Facebook page for International Flavor, that you can follow me. I'm at, maybe we can show my link on there as well. The International Flavor page is right here. And that is, the address is International Flavor. My own personal page is the Samuel Trapp page, and Samuel Trapp 2 is the address. I very much appreciate y'all for coming. Join us as often as possible, and I will keep on keeping on, and I will plan to have you listening to me on Sunday evening at 9 o'clock Central. Thank you.